Good morning, friends. Good Monday morning to you. It is Monday, Monday, May 16th, halfway through the month of May already, and finally getting some warm temperatures. Woohoo! Um, Welcome to another episode of PB Reads the Bible. I'm PB, Pastor Bryant, pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church, and it is good to be together on this somewhat dreary Monday morning. The sun is poking out right now, but it's going to be cloudy and rainy most of the day here in Waynesboro. About that. So stay dry, my friends, stay dry. But that's not why we're here. You're not here for a weather report. You're here to read the Bible with me and to learn a little bit more, to go deeper than just the surface words and get a better understanding of what the whole thing means. And we are on episode 5 on our journey through the book of 1 Samuel. Episode 5 on our journey through the book of 1 Samuel. So today we will be looking at chapter 5. When we get to there in a couple minutes, first, a couple things to mention, go over. First one is to go ahead and check in. Let me know who you are, who's watching this morning. I always like to know that because Facebook just gives me a number, tells me how many accounts are logged in, but I like to know who it is. I'm nosy, I guess. And I know many of you have been following right along through this whole thing, which is awesome. And some haven't been able to. You've found out about this later and have joined me later. That's awesome too. I'm humbled that you take time out of your days, sometimes live, and others you find time whenever you can to engage with this video. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So let me know you're there, and you can leave comments or questions there in the comments section of the stream, or for both cases, you can send me texts to 570-351-1619. Same thing. I think it's important for us because we're a small group. We're living life together, sharing life together. So I think it's important to share our prayer requests and keep each other in prayer. So if there's something you want me to be in prayer about, you want our group to be in prayer about, go ahead and post that in the comment section, or again, send me a text, especially if it's something you wanted to keep a little private. And if that's the case, please let me know. Please let me know. Oh, we've got some checking in. Good morning, Marcia. Good morning, John. And good morning, Marilyn. Good to have you with us. Good to see you this morning. So our question for the day for this week, remember last week's was, am I proud? 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, the question was, how is it with your soul? Last week was, am I proud? This week is, do I grumble or complain constantly? Ooh, do I grumble or complain constantly? Constant complaining creates an alternative reality that leads us to shirk responsibility and blame others for our discontent. That's pretty deep. But so do I grumble or complain constantly? And just a little scripture, you can jot this one down and take a look at it. And so Philippians chapter 2, verses 14 to 16 might help you in contemplating that question. Do I grumble or complain constantly? Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning. So I was looking at the calendar and looking at Samuel. First Samuel is 31 chapters long, I believe. I looked at the calendar and counted out days that I'm going to be available and days I'm not going to be available, and figuring this out. And we're not going to get through 1 Samuel before I go on my vacation. I'm taking 2 weeks vacation in the middle of June, starting June 13th. So on June 9th will be our last session for a bit. We'll be taking a break for several weeks. I think we're going to get only through 18 chapters. Now it is because of that. Well, yeah. Before we take that break, part of the reason why is June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd is the annual conferences sessions. So I'll be out of town. I'll be in Hershey for those 3 days. And it'd be very, very difficult for me to try to make videos and stuff like that. So I mean, I could probably do the first one June 1st, but I'm probably going to need to pack on Tuesday, the day before. So we'll have to skip 3 days there, and we're going to end up. I think I counted 18. We'll be to chapter 18 before I take my mini break. This is from John Hartman. Keep my mom in your prayers. Absolutely, John. Lucille Hartman. We will keep Lucille in our prayers on that. I think I mentioned that this week. Not that it really makes a difference for you folks, but Wednesday and Thursday will be videos. I will pre-record for Wednesday and Thursday this week. At least that's the plan. Hopefully I'll be able to get the two of them done, because Wednesday I'll be out of the area. I'll be in Dillsburg for a good portion of the day anyway, but I think I should be able to do a video in the afternoon for Thursday. And Thursday I just have some personal stuff that we need to kind of take care of. So we won't, not that it'll matter to you, because it'll be, as far as you're concerned, it'll be live at 9 o'clock. It'll go live at 9 a.m. on both of those days. You'll just know that it's not live because I won't be answering your comments or anything like that. Although I will look for them later. So I do that. I do check in on these videos, the recorded later on a couple times during the day, and usually the next day just before we start, just to see if I missed any comments or questions, because those things are important. Facebook doesn't always tell me right away that you've got a question or that you posted something there. So I do go back in and look. And if it's, I will either contact you directly with an answer to your question, or I'll be doing it, follow-up video. All right. And yeah, so back to that again. Keep John's mom, Lucille Hartman, in your prayers. Keep Lucille in your prayers. So let's get to it, shall we? Chapter 5, which is not a very long chapter, but we'll have some stuff to talk about. And just as a reminder of like where we are contextually, what's going on here. As a reminder, last week, Thursday, chapter 4 ended with, chapter 4 was about the Philistines having invading Israel, and Israel having a battle against them. And again, it probably wasn't all of Israel, just part of Israel, a tribe or two, something like that, who happened to be together and willing to fight with each other. Oh, good morning, Pat. Good to have you here with us live this morning. So they had a battle. The Israelites lost. They called for the Ark of the Covenant, brought that over from Shiloh, and then they thought they were going to win because they figured God's on our side. God is here, and but the Philistines are victorious once again. Kill some Israelites and send the rest fleeing for their lives, and they capture the Ark of the Covenant, take it back. When Eli gets the news about his sons and about the Ark of the Covenant, he falls over and dies, because he is so upset about losing the Ark more so than the sons. All right, so that's where we're at. The Ark has been taken away, which was a common practice at the time. The culture, the ancient culture was such that God had a God was connected to a particular place and a particular people. So he was the God of the Israelites versus somebody else who was the God of a different territory, a different land. And so when you conquered another people, you took their God and you brought it back to you, the idol of their God, the resemblance of their God. You brought that with you. You took it home, and we'll see that takes place here to symbolically show not only military victory, but also one might say religious, ecclesiological victory as well. My God's stronger than your God. And so by taking away the Ark of the Covenant, it is, the author is making it seem like God has lost. The Philistines have beaten Israel, and it would seem that they have also beaten God, Yahweh. One last thing before I read this section. I think it's important for us to realize that the story may not have happened exactly this way. Okay, and that's not important. Did these things actually happen? Really isn't an important question, because that wasn't the purpose for the book of First Samuel. It's really not the purpose of much of the Bible. We shouldn't try to read it as historical fact. So rather than reading this as historical fact, let's read it as myth. There's nothing wrong with myth, because what myth does, myth serves the purpose of telling truth in a way that people can understand, and in a dramatic way. Okay, so let's look for the truth in this story rather than the fact in the story. All right, just to read things differently. I'm going to read chapter 5, which, like I said, is a little bit short, but here we go. And I'll read the whole thing and then we'll talk about it. When the Philistines captured the Ark of God, they brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the Ark of God and brought it into the house of Dagon and placed it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face to the ground before the Ark of Yahweh. So they took Dagon and put him back in his place. But when they rose early on the next morning, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the Ark of Yahweh. And the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off upon the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. This is why the priests of Dagon and all who enter the house of Dagon do not step on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. The hand of Yahweh was heavy upon the people of Ashdod, and he terrified and struck them with tumors, both in Ashdod and in his territory. And when the inhabitants of Ashdod saw how things were, they said, "The Ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is heavy on us and on our God Dagon." So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "What shall we do with the Ark of the God of Israel?" The inhabitants of Gath replied, "Let the Ark of God be moved on to us." So they moved the Ark of the God of Israel to Gath. But after they had brought it to Gath, the hand of Yahweh was against the city, causing a very great panic. He struck the inhabitants of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the Ark of the God of Israel to Ekron. But when the Ark of God came to Ekron, the people of Ekron cried out, "Why have they brought around to us the Ark of the God of Israel to kill us and our people?" They sent, therefore, and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines and said, "Send away the Ark of the God of Israel and let it return to its own place, that it may not kill us and our people." For there was a deathly panic throughout the holy city. Throughout the whole city. The hand of God was very heavy there. Those who did not die were stricken with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. End of chapter 5. Okay, so what's going on, right? So they take the Ark back to this town, and the Ark is moving around a lot. The Ark has been moving around a lot. It went from Ebenezer to Ashdod, which is fairly far south in Israel, in Philistine, but neighboring Israel and right alongside the seashore. But the important thing is it's outside of the bounds of Israel. And they would be thinking that this God no longer has any power because he's outside of his region, his milieu, outside of his territory. So they figure it's safe, and that's where they're supposed to do. They take him back, and they take the Ark of the Covenant to the Temple of Dagon. Dagon was actually a Semitic a Semitic god. Probably wasn't the Philistines' original god, because the Philistines came from a different place, but now they're here. They seem to have taken over a Canaanite god, a Semitic god. Probably, again, because of that idea of region and territory, and that's where the god is going to be powerful. And also as a way to syncretize the religion with conquered people, with other people. Dagon was referred to as the father of Baal, and Dagon literally means rain clouds, something like that. And it can mean two things: rain clouds or grain, which is fitting because he would have been considered a fertility god. So they put the Ark of the Covenant in the temple, Dagon's temple, right next to Dagon. Next morning, Dagon is flat on his face in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, so what's going on? Now, this would have been shocking to the people. Because their God is supposed to be this real powerful God and helped them defeat the Israelites. And they also defeated Yahweh. No, they didn't defeat Yahweh. This is the author saying, and God saying, that what is happening, God is allowing to happen. The Philistines might have defeated Israel, but they did not defeat Yahweh. Yahweh is still powerful. And so Dagon is now seen in this obeisant, subservient position of on his knees, on his face before Yahweh. But they fix him up, and then the next day, not only is he on his face down in front of Yahweh, his head's been cut off and his hands have been cut off, broken off. Excuse me, and placed near the threshold. So what's going on? This is, maybe I'm getting slightly ahead, but I don't think so, because the word hands comes up, hand or hands comes up numerous times in this chapter. Here it's speaking of Dagon, and his hands have been cut off, meaning he can no longer do anything. As is his head, he can't think anything. That would be the imagery here anyway. He no longer has the ability to think or to act. Why are they found at the threshold? It might be that might be the author's way of saying that Dagon even tried to escape from Yahweh, but couldn't. And so is left there. Those parts left there. That's possible. We don't know that for sure. But of course, he inserts that thing about, well, that's why the priests don't even step there anymore. They won't step on the threshold. Got to be careful to step over it. But that word, so the word hands is used there numerous times. Water equals chaos. Cheryl says water equals chaos. That is true. Are you referring to him being rain cloud? It could be, but since Dagon was considered a fertility god, the idea of rain clouds is important, because you need the rain is actually involved in that whole idea of fertility, because we're talking about an agrarian society. So not only is fertility, yes, fertility is the ability to procreate and have kids, especially male children, but also fertility is seen in good harvests. And a fertility god is in charge of good harvests. So the rain is part of that. So water does equals chaos, but I don't think so in this case. I don't think that's the rain cloud thing has more to do with that idea of fertility. But for now, let's concentrate on those words hands, because they're going to come up again and again and again. We see numerous times the hands of God, the hand of God is going to come up. So the hand is power, hand is strength, hand is ability to act. And Dagon now no longer has any of those things. And Yahweh, the God of Israel, who they thought they had defeated and had no power, still has hands and still has strength, still has power, can still act, because Philistines beat Israel, but they did not defeat God. They did not defeat Yahweh. They did not defeat the God of Israel. Yahweh of hosts is still powerful, still has hands. In fact, in this description of what takes place, because they now move the Ark of Covenant, the covenant, from there to a different location, and it speaks of the five. It speaks of the lords of the Philistines, or all the lords of the Philistines. There would have been five. The territory of Philistia would have been broken down into five, like lordship or governorship territories for five pieces, and they would come together for important decisions. So this is an important decision. Where is it going to go? And Gath speaks up proudly and boastfully and says, "Oh, we'll take it. We'll take it. Show our strength by taking it." And horrible things happen. And the hand of God was heavy upon them. And so they take it someplace else. And the hand of God was heavy upon them. They try to take it to another place. And why are they bringing it here? Why are they bringing it here? We don't want it. Right? So it moves around. They move it around a couple different times. And that phrase, the hand of God was heavy upon them. Well, the author uses two different words for heavy. The one he uses twice in particular, and it has the same root as the word glory does. The word that was used in chapter 4, verse 22, when the widow of Phinehas, right? Yeah, when Phinehas's widow says, the glory has departed from Israel. The glory has gone into exile from Israel. So that's the same root word. Now the translation, of course, is different, but it's the same root word. Remember, this would have been mostly oral, and so in Hebrew it would sound very similar. You would catch that rootness. You would catch that similarity in the word. So heavy, the hand of the Lord, but also the glory of the hand of the Lord was upon the people. Okay. So the glory of God is still alive. The glory of God is still alive. A couple other things. If you're following along in the NIV, you notice, or in some other translations as well, verse 6 would have been a little bit longer, has a little bit longer piece to it. And the NIV, I think, just puts it in a footnote. Some other translations say it there. So I'm going to read it from the NIV with that addition thrown in. Yahweh's hand was heavy upon the people of Ashdod and its vicinity. He brought devastation upon them and afflicted them with tumors. And rats appeared in their land, and death and destruction were throughout the city. Pause. Now that added sentence there, that extended part of that verse, does appear in some very old manuscripts. So I don't know why some translations include it and some don't. Maybe it's not in the very oldest of manuscripts, or it's just not in the version that some other translations use for their sources. But it's not, it's not something new or terribly incorrect or anything like that. In fact, it was there. Martin Luther used it, and he saw in that, and in this description of tumors, he saw the bubonic plague. He saw the bubonic plague, which does fit very, very well with the description of these tumors, because bubonic comes from bobeos, which means mound, like, tumor. That's where the name comes from. It forms these mounds, these tumors on people's bodies as a result of it. And of course, they do come from it does come from, or is transmitted through fleas found on rats and mice. So this idea of rats or mice throughout the city, we can see this idea of bubonic plague. However, the glory, the heaviness of God's hand is allowing it, creating it, however you want to look at that in this story. And the idea of this verse, this part added in, makes sense when we get to the next chapter as well. So keep this idea of rats and mice in your head when we get to chapter 6 tomorrow. What was I going to say? Deathly panic. That's it. In verse 11, the NIV says, "For death had filled the city with panic." That's fine. The NRSV says there was a deathly panic throughout the whole city. The word translated there it has the same idea of holy war. So it's this holy panic. It is what the people of Israel, it's what the and not necessarily the whole people of Israel, but when the Israelites brought the ark from Shiloh to the battlefield, they were expecting a holy war. They were expecting to be able to create this deathly panic, and it didn't happen. So God is making it happen here instead, completely without the Israelite fighters. So the people gathered the lords back together to decide, please send this ark somewhere else. Let's just send it back to Israel. Get it out of here so that we can live and get away from this heaviness of God's hand. Those who did not die were stricken with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. We'll find out tomorrow what they decide to do and where they're going to send the ark next. So my friends, I hope that this was beneficial. I hope that you learned something or relearned something and through what we've said, what we've read today. As you go about your days, not just today, but every day, keep those eyes and ears, physical and spiritual, open to what our living, loving, active God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, do two things. Say, thank you, God, and then tell somebody about it. Until we meet again, my friends, be blessed. Be blessed.